Welcome to Historic Miamisburg. Today we are kicking off the Bicentennial series of interviews leading up to the city's 200th anniversary as a community, the Bicentennial of Miamisburg. And with us today is Bobbye Sweny. Bobbye Sweny is one of these people that has been very involved in the community since she first arrived here. A few years ago. Bobbye, when did you come to Miamisburg?
1947. And I came, my first trip to Ohio, because I was a Californian, was to visit the home that I hoped to make my own. I wanted to see what Ohio looked like and whether or not it was worth it to give up my family and my job and my friends and my home in California and moved to Ohio. So I came and I tested it because I came in January.
You came in January?
Yes.
Now,
1947.
There had to be a reason, though, that you came to Miamisburg.
Oh, yes, and he was handsome.
Yeah.
Yes. I was not engaged yet, but considering it,
yes,
to Everett Sweny, who was a Miamisburgian by choice. He was a Springboro boy.
Right.
And I had met him at Fort MacArthur when he was a 90-day wonder.
Right.
We were preparing Fort MacArthur to be a military base after being a peacetime base to protect the harbor defenses of Los Angeles. And he reported for duty as a brand new second lieutenant. And I took one look at him and I thought, young man, you don't know it yet, but my name's written all over your body. And it took a few years, but he figured that out.
Yes. Okay, Everett worked where? And
Shirley's Furniture.
Shirley's Furniture.
Yes.
And where was your first home then in Miamisburg?
We bought a little house out on Cottage Avenue. It was just a four-room house, so to speak, and added on some space, a bathroom included. And we lived there for about a year and a half.
Now, when did you move above the furniture store then?
Before our daughter Ann was born.
Okay.
There were two apartments over the furniture store. There was a small one. Do you remember Dicey McGinn?
I've heard that name.
She was the cook for Mobley's Cafe.
Yes,
and she had the little apartment on the front,
yes,
on the north side. And Alkie Wagner, the chief of police,
right,
had the apartment on the south side, which was a 5-room apartment.
Right.
And he had moved out, and Dewey said to us, maybe you'd like to live over the store. And we thought, great. It was wonderful for Butch. He could just run downstairs and
sure,
open the store. So we moved in there in 1949, April of 49.
Yeah.
It was a nice place.
Jim Wagner was a member of my class 59.
Ah.
And I remember when we went to the auditorium school, every morning his dad would drive him up to the auditorium school in a police car. We thought that was great. Okay, how many children do you have?
We had 7, 6 girls and 1 boy.
Okay. And when did you move to Linden Avenue?
We moved to Linden Avenue in 1961.
1961?
Yes. We had outgrown our place. There was a house on 3rd Street across from Dick Baker's grocery
sure,
store, and it was a duplex. And we had outgrown the apartment. We had 3 children at that time, 3 girls. And we needed space, and they needed a yard. So Butch said to me, I called him Butch. One of the first things I said is, his name was Everett. What can I call you? I'll never call you Everett, and I never did. Butch asked me to go down and look at this house. So I looked at it, and the porch was crumbling and everything. I said I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, so he bought it. And he saw all the good parts of it. And we had a wonderful 8 years in that place, but we outgrew the 3 bedrooms
Sure.
and we needed a bigger space.
Right.
And that's when we were able to buy the old Schuler home and move to Linden.
And that's where you live today?
Yes.
You're still there?
Yes, we're still there.
Right. Now, Everett passed away in what year?
10 years ago.
10 years
2004.
ago. Okay.
Yes.
For our viewers, Everett was very involved in the community.
Very much so.
He was member of City Council.
Yes.
He was president of City Council.
Yes.
That's before the charter went into effect.
Yes.
We don't have that office today, but back then, before the charter, the president of council presided at the council meetings.
Yes.
And after he got off the council and the charter had taken place, he became chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Zoning, Building, and Housing Appeals.
And he
20-some years.
27 years, I believe
Yes.
it was. But he got you involved somehow in that, didn't he?
That was funny. Well, I was the secretary.
Yeah.
And had done some secretarial work. I'd done the Civil Service Board, and his secretary had to have some surgery. So he said to me, "Sweetheart, would you mind helping out?" And I said, "Of course I will." And 18 years later, I said to him, "Honey, I don't think your secretary's coming back," and I retired. But it was fun. That was a great board, a very great board to work with.
Yes, and Everett did a great job chairing that board.
He was.
So
he was.
He was
very
good
committed.
in what he did.
Yep.
He was good in what he did. When you came to Miamisburg, what was your first impressions?
I thought we were coming in the alley. It was brick street, and I hadn't seen anything like that. But I was so impressed with the architecture of the buildings. I'd never lived in a town or been in a town of that age. In California, you don't see buildings of that age unless they're adobes and stuff like the Missions. And the architecture was so interesting, and I fell in love. I really fell in love with this city.
Right. But you became involved yourself.
Yes.
What were some of the organizations that you got into?
Well, the first one that I got into was because of Myrtle Rittenbach. You may remember her. She was the bookkeeper for the store, and she said to me, "Bobbye, to get to know people, why don't you join my sorority, which is Kappa Delta Phi?" And so she got me into a new chapter, and I've been a member ever since.
Right.
I am now their oldest past national president, so although I worry a little about that position. And I got involved in some of my church activities, and with the children in school. I was a Girl Scout leader, and then secretary, as you said, of building.
Right.
I was on the beautification commission.
Right. And Monday Night Club?
Monday Night Club, I've been a member there for 33 years.
Yeah, and they just celebrated their 100th anniversary?
No, we will be celebrating our 125th, the same year that Miamisburg celebrates its 200.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
It was Round Table was celebrating the 100.
That's right, the Round
yes,
Table.
I was a guest
You were
there.
part of that too, weren't you?
No, I was a guest there. I've been a speaker for their organization several times, and they very kindly invited me to help them celebrate their 100th.
Okay. You got involved early on in the formation of the Historical Society.
Well, not really. I was involved with the Sesquicentennial, and to that extent with the Historical Society. The Business and Professional Women's Club is the one that started the Historical Society a year before the Sesquicentennial. And their first job was to write the history so they could do the pageant.
Right. Pageant, that was some production.
That was a really good one, yes.
How did you get involved in the Bicentennial?
In the Bicentennial?
Or not the Bicentennial, the Sesquicentennial.
Ted Fink.
And
you know, Ted, he was the chairman, and Ted did not understand the word no unless he was saying it.
Yeah.
He said to me, "I want you to open the headquarters." I said, "Ted, I don't have time. I have children." And never heard it. I opened the headquarters in the Market Square building. Yes,
right.
And loved it. I really loved that. I think that was the benchmark celebration for Miamisburg.
That's the one most people talk about.
Yes.
We better explain some of the people we've mentioned. You mentioned Myrtle Rittenbach.
Yes.
Her husband Al was a long-time barber.
Yes.
On Main Street in Miamisburg. And back then, how many barber shops did we have?
Oh, there were dozens.
Oh, right on Main Street.
It.
Yeah. Bars and
grocery stores.
Bars and barber shops.
Yes,
right?
yes.
At one time, they tell me we had 26 bars in downtown Miamisburg.
I wouldn't be at all surprised. Yeah. We had 36 tobacco warehouses. Right. So. You know.
Right. And Ted Fink was co-owner of Fink Jeske Chevrolet.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
And he was quite active in the Lions Club back then.
Very much, very much. Ted was, yes, he had to give back to a community, like Butch did.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Main Street, because you lived right down on Main Street.
Absolutely loved it.
And you saw it involved. When you came to town, though, we didn't have any empty stores or
no.
anything.
No.
I remember when I first joined the Miamisburg News back in '62, I was downtown quite often, and what impressed me, no matter what, early morning you would see the owners of the stores out sweeping their sidewalks. And their curbs.
And washing their windows.
Yes.
And there was a lot of pride.
There was, and we had a very vibrant downtown. Penny store, Western Auto, I don't know how many ladies' dress shops and shoe stores.
Shoes to Shiny Snyder,
One
of my favorites. Yeah. Have I got a job for you?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, he always had the shoes for you.
Red Goose shoes, wasn't it?
Red Goose.
Right. Always, and when he wasn't in the store with a customer, he'd be out on the sidewalk
talking to people.
And if he didn't get you in the store, I know many a time Mom and Dad would take my brother and I up to the Plaza Theater. We lived on South Main Street, and we would walk up on Saturday night especially. And I remember a couple times, had no intention of getting shoes, but Dad would stop and talk to Heine and Sarah, and we'd wind up in the store, and one of us got a pair of shoes.
Somebody got a pair of shoes. Saturday nights, weren't they wonderful in old Miamisburg? Do you remember Whitey Bruff's mother and dad? They used to bring their car down and park it on Main Street. There were no time limits on parking. You could park all day on Main Street. And they'd park it in the afternoon and come back at night and sit in the car and talk to the people walking up and down the street. It was a social event.
Well, my dad did that. We lived down where the beauty shop was, Dr. Wagner's store. That's where her eye doctor. In fact, Dad sold at the house to Dr. Wagner to start his business. But I remember Dad would drive his car up, park it on Main Street, walk home, and then we would all walk uptown and eat at Daisy's.
Oh, yes.
And get a bag of popcorn at
Pop Harmon's.
Pop Harmon's.
I love his heart.
And then go to the plaza. And then after the show, most of the people just stood around by their cars and talked to one another. And those were good days. It was a social event.
Well, of course, the merchants, though, gave tickets. For every amount that you bought, you got tickets. And on Saturday night, they had the big drawings down at the Market Square building, and you could win a bag of groceries or tickets to the theater or ice cream at one of the shops, any of those things. There were dozens of things you could win, and people loved it.
Right.
It was fun.
How many years did you stay in business at Shirley's?
Well, Butch worked for Dewey before he left for the service, and was expected to come back because Dewey wanted to retire and let Butch run the store, which he did. So he was back from 46 until we closed it in 74.
In 74, okay. Okay, let's get back to the Sesquicentennial.
Oh, yes.
Ted had a knack of getting people to do things.
Absolutely.
And the Lions Club, which
Yes.
he was a member of, they
sponsored this.
They sponsored
Yes.
the entire program, I
Yes.
believe, but also sponsored the history book.
The one that Esther Light
Right.
wrote, yes.
That was Miamisburg, the first 150 years.
Yes.
Esther Light, local historian, had written a number of articles for the Miamisburg News, and that was all published. And when we got down to the Bicentennial, then that's when Maddie took it from 1968.
The Conceptual Quintennial,
Right.
175th.
I'm glad you pronounced it because I
Yes.
could never do that.
I had to say it often enough.
Okay. But anyway, there was activities for everybody in the Bicentennial, wasn't there?
Oh, my yes. My yes. We had, there were so many organizations in the Sesquicentennial, especially the Brothers of the Brush
Right.
and the girls group, the ladies group, and we had Ladies' Day and we had Agricultural Day, and all of the merchants downtown put in historic things in their window to represent what they did before. We had beautiful old furniture from way back when, and all of them did. So it was fun to walk down the street and look in all the windows. And they decorated like crazy for the Sesquicentennial. When we got around to the 175th, we picked up a lot of
Yes, we
that
did.
because it had been successful. But the beautiful part of the Sesquicentennial was that even families got involved. Mothers made costumes for all of them because we had our parades, our promenade
Yes.
that and the mayor usually led the promenade, and everybody got into them, and we took pictures galore of those.
Yeah.
We have wonderful pictures of the Sesquicentennial.
I can still remember Bob Mears and his wife Rose leading those promenades.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And John Laney,
John Laney.
yes.
I told you before we started taping here that I
You
just
ran
had
into
breakfast yesterday with John Laney, and for the benefit of our viewers, John Laney was our first city manager.
First city manager, and
And
a very good one.
oh, he was a good one.
Yes.
And went from Miamisburg to Kettering,
Yes.
was their city manager, and then he went to out to Kansas City and was the assistant county administrator before taking over as president of the Hallmark Card Foundation.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, so-
what a career.
What a career, yeah. But he got his start here in Miamisburg. And a lot of people have gotten their starts here in Miamisburg.
You know, the thing that I loved about coming to Miamisburg and being a part of the downtown, as you say, is I had lived in an area where you walked into a store and nobody knew you. Know. Down here, everybody knew everybody, and you called them by name. And like the Mary Ann shop.
Right.
Husbands went to the Mary Ann shop because she knew all the ladies in town, what sizes they wore, what they had in their wardrobes, and you could go down and pick out dresses, and she would help you, and they were perfect.
Yeah.
A delightful place, lovely woman.
I can remember as a kid going uptown, and as typical kids, every now and then we do something that we weren't supposed to do, and the merchants would come out and they knew who you were. Now, Dick, I'm going to call your mom, and a lot of times they did.
Our children learned very quickly that they couldn't get away with anything because everybody knew them in
That's right.
Miamisburg, and would make a casual, oh, I saw Chuck out at so-and-so.
Right.
Well, he wasn't allowed that far, so he was in trouble the minute he got home.
But I worked at the Miamisburg News from 1961 to 1972, and during that time, was over town quite a bit, and John Schertz's barbershop, you remember
Oh,
that?
yes.
It was right part of the
Theater.
Plaza Theater. And all the businessmen would hang out in John's barbershop. And you'd mentioned the Brothers of the Brush earlier. Well, there was a homeless person showed up in Miamisburg and kind of hung around the barbershop. And in fact, Lee Schultz and Charlie Schertz, who ran the Plaza Theater at that time, they let this guy sleep in the basement of the Plaza Theater. And he died down there. He died one night.
Yeah.
Had no family. No one knew who he... In fact, I don't I don't even recall his name either. We called him Sheepskin. And John Sherritts gave everybody a nickname. And so when the Brothers of the Brush was formed, we, through the barbershop group, we formed the Sheepskin Chapter Brothers of the Brush. And there wasn't money to bury this guy, and he was at Dick Bruff's funeral home for months. And John was collecting money so we could give the guy a proper burial. And I remember we eventually collected enough. He was buried in Potter's Field out at Hillgrove. And for a couple of years, we would have a memorial service for him. The Brothers of the Brush, Sheepskin Chapter, would get together. But little things like that.
Little things that you remember.
There was just some great things that occurred during the Sesquicentennial.
It was a very great time.
Right. You were secretary of that, and
I was not secretary. You know, people keep saying that I was secretary. I was not. I was the headquarters chairman.
Well, okay, but you know, I think everybody thought you were the secretary.
Well, because I was Ted's right arm.
You were his right arm. Well, you're right.
He trusted me, and I was pleased to help.
Well, whatever you did a good job, because I remember the headquarters building.
Yes.
In fact, I did a radio show, 5 minutes every day during the Sesquicentennial.
During the Sesquicentennial.
And Walter Staley.
Yes.
Former mayor.
Yes.
He was the one that every day he produced that little show. We did it over WPFB radio. Middletown. And he would have me a different person to interview each day. And so everybody, the mayor, down to former mayors, everybody in the community was involved in the Sesquicentennial.
That was the beauty of it, yes.
Yes. And it came along at a good time in Miamisburg, because we had just gone through two political things, if you remember.
Yes.
The light plant and the charter. Very controversial.
Yes.
And don't you think that kind of brought the community back?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And it was a big celebration. We hadn't had anything like that. And everyone wanted to be a part of it. But our downtown was so active at that time that it was a habit for them to come to town to do their shopping. There was no mall to go out to, and Miamisburg was the center, the hub of our whole city. So of course they wanted to be a part of all that. And the company, we did hire a company to come in and give us some guidance about some of the things that we did, and it was well worth whatever we spent to do that. And I'm sure the Lions Club probably picked up a good portion of that. But the people that were involved, Jane Chance was one of them, who later was chaired the committee that got the charter into effect in Miamisburg. A wonderful teacher.
Yes.
Has a school named after her.
She was a former Miamisburg city council member.
Yes.
In fact, she was city council person when she died.
So we had a lot of people that were involved in it, and that was the success of it, was that everybody felt a part of it. It was their celebration.
Sure.
Yep.
Over the years, I have given you a title because in my years as mayor, I get a lot of inquiries about the history of Miamisburg. And those things that I don't know, I have always referred people to you. I said, she's our resident historian. Now that's pretty good for somebody that just moved here in '47, but
yes,
you really picked up on the history of the community.
I fell in love with Miamisburg, and my husband was a genealogist. His family have lived in Springboro since 1799, the Null family, and the Sweny family in Lebanon and Clear Creek Township since 1798. And so he can go and find the graves of his fourth great-grandfather. I was nomadic. So I had none of this, and I loved that feeling of background, and I wanted our children to understand the city that they were growing up in. And through him and his interest in the people of Miamisburg, I became interested in them and loved finding the connections of the families, who married who and who lives where. And he did a very fine slideshow of the old families of Miamisburg, which I have done since as a program. But, and working with that, and in connection with that, I grew to, and picked up, oh, and I had such wonderful people as Margaret Schmidt, who was a fount of information, and Harriet Hieronymus, who had lived here all her life. And I asked questions, and sat at their feet literally and listened to them tell the story of Miamisburg. That's how I came interested in it.
Well, good. When you first moved here, and you moved down on Linden Avenue, Miamisburg High School was right across the street.
Yes.
Yes. And you've seen the school system in Miamisburg evolve over the years.
Have people involved in the school system, yes. My one daughter will finish her 35th year as an art teacher.
In talking, I ran into you and Kathy a couple days ago, and she told me she's going to retire this year. And I thought, well, you're not old enough to retire, but 35 years.
35 years she's had, yes.
Yeah.
And of course, we had my son-in-law Tim was the coach for 18 years,
That's
he retired last year.
And that's Tim Lewis.
Tim Lewis, and his wife is the secretary of our pneumatics Lang School, and their son teaches in Centerville, is a coach and teacher in Centerville, and their daughter-in-law is whatever they call it. She works with the children that are being put into the system, you know, with problems, and she works with them and is very fine. And then of course I got involved in the school through the Historical Society.
That's right. That's right. We're going to talk about that in our next series, about that involvement. I know you've been very active at Our Lady of Good Hope Church.
Yes.
Now, when you first moved to Miamisburg, the church wasn't located where it is today.
Oh no, it was out on the corner of Main and
Lock Street.
Lock Street.
Right across from the Gephardt Tavern.
Yes.
And it was called St. Michael's then, wasn't it?
Well, the early one was. The chapel was called St. Michael's, and then it was called Our Lady of Consolation, I think, maybe, and then Our Lady of Good Hope. So it was Our Lady of Good Hope when I came here.
Yeah.
But Father Rovers was the pastor.
And he had been, I think he was priest over 50 years.
Oh, yes, he was here forever.
Right. And that involvement in that church has evolved over the years.
Very much so. I'm very proud of what they've done, and I was fortunate to be active in their celebration of their 125th.
Right.
So yes, and I still do. My mother was in her 90s, and she used to talk about taking communion to the old people.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm in my 90s, I'm still taking communion out to Sycamore Glen. That's part of my contribution at church.
Well, I remember as a kid, the nuns walking up and down the streets.
In habit.
In habit, yes. You don't see that too much.
No. All of our children went to parochial school through the 8th grade, but they all went to public school for high school.
Okay. This is going to be the conclusion of part 1 of our interview today with Bobbye Sweny. I have a lot more questions to ask you, Bobbye. So
all right.
We're going to make this a 2-parter.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And as I kind of related to at the beginning of the show, this is going to be a series that's going to lead us up to the city's bicentennial celebration in 2018.
All right, good.
So we'll be back together in a few minutes.
Good, thank you.